The massive crystal cities floated through space like jewels against the black sky. Each one was bigger than Earth's moon, spinning slowly as they moved between the stars. These were the homes of the Zeth-Kari, the rulers of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. Commander Sarah Chen pressed her face against the small window of the human transport ship. She had never seen anything so beautiful or so frightening. The Zeth-Kari ships moved without any visible engines, powered by technology that humans could barely understand. Their cities glowed with soft light that seemed to come from the crystal walls themselves. "First time seeing them?" asked Captain Morris, joining her at the window. His weathered face showed the stress of the long journey from Earth. "Yeah," Sarah replied. "Hard to believe we're about to ask them for help." The human ship was ugly compared to the Zeth-Kari vessels. It was made of metal and plastic, with big engines that burned chemical fuel. Compared to the graceful alien ships, it looked like a flying garbage can. Sarah knew the Zeth-Kari thought the same thing about all human technology. 3 months ago, Earth had made first contact with the Confederation. It should have been the greatest day in human history. Instead, it became the most embarrassing. The Zeth-Kari had taken one look at human civilization and labeled them primitive barbarians. They said humans were too violent, too short-lived, and too stupid to join galactic society. "Attention, human vessel," came a cold voice over the radio. The translation system made it sound flat and emotionless. "You are approaching sacred space. State your business." Captain Morris picked up the radio. "This is Earth diplomatic ship Unity. We request permission to speak with the High Council." There was a long pause. "Permission denied. Return to your assigned worlds." Sarah grabbed the radio from Morris. "This is Commander Sarah Chen, head of Earth's diplomatic mission. We have new information about human capabilities. We request 5 minutes to present our case." Another pause, longer this time. "You have been granted an audience. Follow the guide ship. Do not deviate from the planned route." A small Zeth-Kari ship appeared beside them. It was shaped like a flower made of silver, beautiful and alien. It led them toward the largest crystal city, which Sarah now realized was bigger than she had thought. As they got closer, she could see it was actually several cities connected by bridges of light. The docking bay was enormous. Their ship looked tiny sitting on the crystal floor. As they walked down the ramp, Sarah felt the artificial gravity adjust to match Earth normal. Even this small courtesy felt like a gift from beings who clearly saw humans as insects. The Zeth-Kari who met them was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Its eyes were large and silver, and when it looked at the humans, Sarah felt like it was reading her thoughts. "I am Arbiter Veltara," it said without moving its mouth. The words appeared directly in their minds. "I will escort you to the council chamber. Try not to embarrass yourselves further." They walked through corridors that defied physics. The walls curved in directions that hurt to look at, and gravity seemed to shift as they moved. Sarah saw other aliens in the distance, all tall and graceful, all looking at the human group with barely hidden disgust. The council chamber was a sphere of pure light. As they entered, Sarah saw 12 Zeth-Kari sitting on platforms that floated in midair. Each one wore robes that seemed to be made of starlight, and their presence filled the room with a feeling of ancient wisdom and power. "Speak quickly, humans," said the one in the center. His mental voice carried the weight of centuries. "We have important matters to attend to." Sarah stepped forward. "Honored counselors, we come to ask for a chance to prove ourselves. Yes, humans fight wars. Yes, we have damaged our planet, but we also have qualities that might be valuable to the Confederation, such as..." The question came with a wave of mental laughter from the council. "We adapt quickly. We solve problems in new ways. We don't give up when things look impossible." Arbiter Veltara floated forward. "Child, your species has existed for less than 1 million years. We have watched the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations. You have nothing to teach us." Captain Morris stepped up beside Sarah. "With respect, sir, that's exactly our point. Every civilization you've watched followed the same pattern. They got advanced, they got comfortable, and then they fell. Maybe what you need is a species that's too stupid to know when it's beaten. The council chamber fell silent. The Zethkari exchanged glances that carried whole conversations. You war among yourselves, said another counselor. Even now, your planet has dozens of conflicts. Yes, Sarah admitted. We fight. But we also forgive. We also help each other when times get really bad. When our planet was attacked by asteroids, countries that had been enemies worked together to save everyone. You poison your own world, added a third counselor. We're learning to fix that, Morris said. We're not perfect, but we're trying to get better. Your technology is primitive, said a fourth. Your ships barely work. Your weapons are crude chemical explosives. Sarah took a deep breath. You're right about all of that. But crude weapons sometimes work when fancy ones don't. And sometimes being primitive means being flexible. The lead counselor leaned forward. What exactly are you asking for? Humans? A chance, Sarah said simply. Let us prove that we can contribute to the Confederation. Give us access to some of your technology. Let us join the galactic community as junior members. We promise we won't embarrass you. The council was quiet for a long moment. Finally, the lead counselor spoke. Your request is denied. Your species is chaotic, violent, and unpredictable. You lack the spiritual development necessary for civilized society. You will remain on your assigned worlds until you evolve beyond your current barbaric state. Arbiter Veltara gestured toward the door. In perhaps 10,000 years, your descendants might be ready for this conversation. Return to your ships. As they walked back through the crystal corridors, Sarah felt the weight of failure. The most important mission in human history, and she had blown it. Behind them, she could hear the Zethkari discussing them in their mental language, and she didn't need telepathy to know they were being mocked. Don't beat yourself up, Morris said quietly. We knew this was a long shot. But what if they're right? Sarah asked. What if we really are just barbarians? Morris stopped walking and looked at her. Sarah, my grandfather used to say something. He said the difference between a barbarian and a citizen is that barbarians fight for survival, while citizens fight for comfort. Maybe being a barbarian isn't such a bad thing. As their ship lifted off from the Crystal City, Sarah watched the Zethkari ships gliding peacefully through space. They were beautiful, advanced, and completely sure of their superiority. She wondered if that confidence might someday be their weakness. She had no way of knowing that in 6 months, something would come from the dark between stars that would make the Zethkari wish they had listened to the barbarians. Deep in the center of the galaxy, where ancient stars burned with strange colors, something stirred in the darkness. For millions of years, it had been sleeping in a prison made of twisted space and time. The Zethkari had found the prison long ago, but they could not read the warnings written on its walls. They thought it was just an old monument left by some forgotten race. They were wrong. Dr. Elena Vasquez was working late in her laboratory on New Geneva when the first reports came in. As Earth's leading expert on alien technology, she had been trying to reverse engineer Zethkari devices from the few scraps the Confederation had left behind during first contact. Elena! Her assistant Marcus burst through the door, his face pale. You need to see this. The main screen showed a Confederation news broadcast. The translator was struggling with the Zethkari language, but the images were clear enough. A massive structure was emerging from what looked like empty space near the galactic core. It was black as midnight and shaped like a twisted star, with thousands of smaller objects streaming out from its center. What am I looking at? Elena asked. The Confederation is calling it an archaeological disaster, Marcus said. Some kind of ancient prison just broke open. They're sending their best ships to investigate. Elena watched as graceful Zethkari vessels approached the dark structure. They were beautiful ships, made of the same living crystal as their cities. She could see their weapons charging, energy patterns that bent space itself. Then the dark ships moved. They were nothing like Confederation vessels. Where Zethkari ships flowed like dancers, these moved like hunting animals. They were huge, each one the size of a small moon, covered in strange growths that pulsed with red light. As Elena watched, they opened fire. The Zethkari energy weapons struck the dark ships and simply disappeared. The exotic matter projectiles that could destroy planets just vanished when they hit the alien hulls. The reality-bending beams that could fold space in half had no effect at all. But the dark ship's weapons worked perfectly. Streams of silver light reached out from the alien vessels and touched the Zethkari ships. Where the light touched, the crystal hulls began to crack and crumble. The beautiful ships that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years fell apart like sandcastles. "My God," Elena whispered. "What are those things?" The answer came 3 days later, when the Confederation's greatest leaders held an emergency broadcast to the entire galaxy. Senior Arbiter Veltara appeared on every screen in human space, his usual arrogance replaced by something Elena had never seen before. "Fear. Citizens of the Confederation," he began, his mental voice shaking. "We face a threat unlike any in recorded history. The entities that have emerged from the galactic core are known as the Devourers. Our historical archives speak of them only in legends." Elena leaned forward. The Zethkari never admitted they didn't know something. Millions of years ago, the Devourers consumed entire civilizations. They feed on life itself, harvesting the energy of living souls to power their machines. Our ancestors thought they had been destroyed, but they were only imprisoned. The broadcast showed more battles. Confederation fleets threw everything they had at the advancing Devourers, but nothing worked. The alien ships absorbed energy weapons, ignored physical attacks, and responded with that terrible silver light that turned living beings into empty husks. Worse, the Devourers were learning. Each battle made them stronger, their ships adapting to new weapons in real time. The Confederation's greatest advantage, their advanced technology, was useless against an enemy that could copy and improve on anything they saw. "We have made the difficult decision to call upon the Luminari," Veltara continued. "Our gods will descend from their higher realm to aid us in this dark hour." Elena had heard of the Luminari. They were the beings the Zethkari worshipped. Ancient entities of pure energy who had guided the Confederation for thousands of years. They were said to be beyond physical form, living in dimensions of pure thought and infinite power. The gods came. Elena watched in amazement as beings of living light materialized in space around the Devourer fleet. They were beautiful beyond description, their forms shifting between geometric patterns and flowing energy. The lead entity, identified as the Keeper of the Eternal Light, was a pillar of golden fire that seemed to bend reality around itself. The battle that followed was like watching gods fight demons. The Luminari wielded forces that human science couldn't even name. They reached into higher dimensions, pulling down energies that made stars look like candles. They rewrote the laws of physics in the space around them, making weapons that should have been impossible. For a moment, it looked like they might win. Then the Devourers revealed their true nature. The silver light that had destroyed Confederation ships reached out toward the Luminari, but instead of killing them, it began to pull. Elena watched in horror as the gods themselves were slowly dragged toward the Devourer ships, their perfect forms stretched and twisted by some unimaginable force. They're not just feeding on life, Elena realized. They're feeding on consciousness itself, on souls. The Keeper of the Eternal Light fought hardest, its golden fire burning bright enough to light up the entire battlefield. But even gods had limits. One by one, the Luminari were captured, pulled into the dark ships like fish caught in nets. The Confederation news feeds went silent after that. Elena and her team picked up scattered emergency broadcasts from the outer worlds. Fragments of desperate messages from fleeing ships. The core worlds were falling one by one. Entire star systems went dark as the Devourers harvested them completely. 2 weeks after the first contact, Arbiter Veltara appeared on the screens again. But this was not the proud, arrogant leader who had dismissed humanity. This was a broken being, his crystal city crumbling around him. "To all species within Confederation space," he said, his mental voice barely a whisper. "This is our final transmission. The Devourers have taken our gods. Our fleets are destroyed. Our worlds are dying." He paused, and Elena could see the effort it cost him to speak the next words. "All species are hereby granted emergency citizenship in the Confederation. All quarantine restrictions are lifted. We formally request aid from any who would stand against extinction." The transmission cut off abruptly. Elena stared at the empty screen, her mind racing. Emergency citizenship meant access to Confederation technology. It meant humanity was no longer trapped on their reservation worlds. It also meant they were being asked to fight an enemy that had just defeated gods. "Marcus," she said quietly, "get me a channel to Earth Command." "What are you going to tell them?" Elena looked out at the stars, where somewhere in the darkness, ancient machines were harvesting the light of civilization itself, that the barbarians might be the galaxy's last hope. Across human space, emergency meetings were being held. Military commanders who had spent their careers preparing for wars against other humans suddenly found themselves planning a campaign against beings that could capture gods. Politicians who had argued about trade deals and territory were now faced with the possible extinction of all life in the galaxy. But humans had one advantage that the elegant Zethkari lacked. They were used to fighting against impossible odds. Every human knew stories of their ancestors holding the line against overwhelming enemies, of desperate last stands that somehow turned into victories. As the news spread through human colonies, the response was not panic or surrender. It was anger. The galaxy had called them barbarians, had refused to let them join the community of civilized worlds. Now that community was dying, and the barbarians were the only ones left who might be able to save it. Admiral Jackson Torres stood in the command center of the UES Defiance, staring at the tactical display with the same look he used to give chess problems. Around him, his staff was arguing about escape routes and evacuation plans. They had just watched the Confederation's finest fleets get destroyed like toys. "Sir," called out Commander Williams from the communications station, "New Geneva Colony is requesting immediate evacuation. They say the Devourers will reach them in 3 days." "Negative," Torres said calmly. "We're not running." The command center went quiet. Captain Rebecca Santos, his tactical officer, stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, these things just defeated beings that the Zethkari worship as gods. Our weapons couldn't even scratch Confederation ships, and the Devourers tore through them like paper." Torres smiled, and everyone who knew him recognized that expression. It was the same smile he'd worn before the Battle of Proxima, when he'd defeated a superior enemy force using nothing but mining equipment and pure stubbornness. "Santos, pull up the battle recordings again. Not the pretty overview shots the Confederation showed us. I want the detailed sensor data our spy satellites collected." The main screen filled with technical readouts from the battles. Torres walked up to it, pointing at various sections. "Look at this. The Devourers optimize everything for maximum efficiency. They analyze enemy weapons, adapt their defenses, then counterattack with exactly the right amount of force to win. No waste, no overkill, no unnecessary risk. That's why they're winning," Williams said. "That's why they're going to lose." Torres replied. "They're thinking like machines. Perfect, logical, efficient machines. But war isn't logical." Technical Sergeant Maria Santos looked up from her workstation. "What are you thinking, sir?" "I'm thinking that the Confederation fights like they live," Torres said. "Everything elegant. Everything planned. Everything following the rules. But what if we don't follow the rules? What if we do things that don't make sense?" Dr. Elena Vasquez had been working around the clock since arriving on the Defiance. Her job was to figure out how Devourer technology worked, but she was making discoveries that nobody expected. "Admiral," she called out, excitement clear in her voice, "I need to show you something." Torres walked over to her station, where she had been analyzing data from captured Devourer fragments. "I've been studying their soul harvesting technology," Elena said. "It works by creating a resonance with the target's consciousness, then using that resonance to extract life energy. It's incredibly sophisticated." Oh, and I tried testing it on human brain scan data." Elena pulled up a complex chart. "Look at this. The resonance pattern completely breaks down when it hits human neural activity." Torres studied the readout. "What does that mean?" "It means they can't harvest us," Elena said with a grin. "Human consciousness is too chaotic, too random. We create so much mental noise that their extraction systems can't lock onto us. The first test came sooner than anyone expected. A Devourer scout ship dropped out of hyperspace near the mining colony on Kepler Station. It was smaller than the main battle vessels, only the size of a city instead of a moon, but it was still more powerful than anything humanity had ever faced. The Colonial Defense Force consisted of 3 patrol boats and a converted mining platform. By every military calculation, they should have been destroyed in seconds. Instead, they gave the Devourers their first taste of human tactical thinking. Captain Ahmed Hassan commanded the mining platform Rockbreaker. When the Devourer ship began its scan, he did something no Confederation commander would ever consider. He turned off his engines and played dead. The Devourer ship, programmed for efficiency, classified the platform as non-threatening and moved on to scan the patrol boats. That's when Hassan fired up the mining lasers and hit the alien ship's sensor array with a concentrated beam designed to cut through solid rock. The Devourer ship tried to adapt its shields, but the mining laser wasn't a weapon. It was an industrial tool with completely different energy patterns. While the ship's computer struggled to categorize the threat, Sergeant Santos rammed her patrol boat directly into its hull. Her ship was loaded with mining explosives, simple chemical charges meant for breaking up asteroids. The Devourer's adaptive armor was designed to handle exotic energy weapons and matter disintegrators. It had no protocols for crude chemical bombs going off inside its hull. The scout ship survived, but it was damaged and confused. For the first time since awakening, a Devourer vessel had been hurt by an opponent it should have easily defeated. Word of the victory spread through human space like wildfire. More importantly, it reached the scattered survivors of Confederation worlds. For the first time in months, there was hope. Torres used that hope to build something the galaxy had never seen: a fleet of misfits and rejects. Confederation refugees brought their knowledge of advanced technology. Human engineers brought their talent for improvisation. Pirates and smugglers brought ships that weren't in any official database. The real breakthrough came when Dr. Vasquez made another discovery. She had been studying captured Devourer technology when she noticed something odd. "They're not just machines," she announced at the daily briefing. "They're learning machines. They study each battle and adapt for the next one. But they only adapt to threats they understand." Torres leaned back in his chair. What happens if they encounter something they've never seen before? Torres leaned back in his chair. "Their adaptation protocols crash," Elena said. "I've been running simulations. If you hit them with something completely outside their experience, they freeze up for several seconds while their systems try to categorize it." "Several seconds is a long time in a battle," Captain Santos observed. "Exactly," Elena said. "And here's the really interesting part. Humans do things that don't exist in their database. They've fought the Confederation for millions of years, but they've never fought anyone like us." The first major engagement came at the ruins of Veltara Prime, the former capital of the Confederation. The Devourers had established a harvesting facility there, slowly draining the life from the planet's remaining population. Torres brought his fleet out of hyperspace, playing Earth's classical music at maximum volume. The Devourer response fleet emerged to meet them. Massive ships that made the human vessels look like insects. But Torres had studied their patterns. He knew they would try to adapt to human weapons, so he made sure they had no idea what human weapons actually were. The first salvo came from converted cargo ships firing loads of space garbage at relativistic speeds. The Devourer's shields handled the impact easily, but their computers couldn't figure out why anyone would fire trash as a weapon. While they were analyzing the garbage, human fighters swarmed their flanks. But these weren't firing conventional missiles. They were firing containers of industrial nanobots, programmed to eat metal. The nanobots weren't weapons either, just maintenance equipment reprogrammed for mayhem. The Devourer ships tried to adapt, but every time they figured out one threat, the humans switched to something completely different. Mining charges became torpedoes. Medical equipment became jamming devices. Children's toys, rewired by human engineers, became signal disruptors that confused Devourer navigation systems. In the middle of the battle, something happened that no one expected. One of the Devourer ships tried to harvest a human pilot whose fighter had been disabled. The pilot, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, was pulled toward the alien vessel by the same silver light that had captured gods. But when the harvesting beam touched her, it didn't drain her life. Instead, it overloaded. The feedback traveled back through the ship's systems, causing cascading failures throughout the vessel. The mighty Devourer ship went dark and began drifting helplessly. "Did you see that?" Elena shouted over the battle noise. "They can't harvest us. We're poison to their systems." Torres grabbed the comm system. All ships. If you get caught in their harvesting beam, don't fight it. Let them try to drain you." What followed was the strangest battle in galactic history. Human pilots actually flew into the Devourer harvesting beams, causing system failures and confusion among the alien fleet. Ships that had defeated gods found themselves crippled by contact with human consciousness. When the battle was over, 3 Devourer ships had been destroyed, and 2 more captured. The human fleet had lost half its ships, but they had proven something important. The Devourers could be beaten. More importantly, they had sent a message that traveled across the galaxy faster than any ship. The Barbarians were fighting back, and they were winning. In the wreckage of Veltara Prime, among the ruins of crystal cities and broken dreams, Torres looked out at the stars and smiled his chess player smile. "Set course for the galactic core," he told his navigator. "Sir?" the young officer asked nervously. "If we're going to be barbarians," Torres said, "let's go show these machines what barbarians do to bullies." Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Unity, watching the massive Devourer flagship grow larger on the screen. 6 months ago, she had been dismissed by the Zethkari High Council as a barbarian. Now she was leading the most important rescue mission in galactic history. "Sensors are picking up massive energy signatures from inside that ship," reported Lieutenant Murphy. "It has to be the Luminari." The flagship was the largest Devourer vessel they had encountered. A twisted spire of black metal that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Unlike the other ships, this one didn't move to attack. It simply hung in space above the ruins of Veltara Prime, slowly draining power from the captured gods. "Admiral Torres was right," Chen said quietly. "They're using the Luminari as a power source. That's why this ship doesn't need to harvest from planets." Beside her, Dr. Elena Vasquez was studying the readings from her portable scanner. "The energy patterns are incredible. The Luminari aren't just prisoners. They're being slowly converted into fuel for the Devourer fleet." Chen had volunteered for this mission despite knowing it was probably suicide. The plan was simple and completely insane. Board the flagship, rescue the gods, and somehow escape before the most powerful ship in the Devourer fleet destroyed them. "Boarding parties. Report status," Chen said into her comm unit. "Marine Squad Alpha ready," came the voice of Sergeant Williams. "Engineering Team Bravo ready," reported Chief Gonzalez. "Medical Team Charlie ready," added Dr. Reyes. They were all volunteers. Every person on this mission knew they probably wouldn't be coming back. But they also knew that if the Luminari died, the Confederation would lose its last hope of rebuilding. The gods might have failed to stop the Devourers, but they still represented thousands of years of knowledge and wisdom. "Remember," Chen told them, "we're not trying to be heroes. We get in. We get the Luminari out. We get home. Anyone who tries to be fancy gets left behind." The approach had to be perfect. The flagship's defenses could have destroyed their ship in seconds, but it was designed to fight other starships. Not tiny boarding pods. Chen's team rode in converted mining capsules, small enough to slip through the gaps in the Devourer sensor grid. As they got closer to the hull, Chen could see that the ship was even stranger than it looked on sensors. The metal surface was covered in organic growths that pulsed with red light. Strange symbols were carved into the hull, writing in a language that hurt to look at. "Contact in 30 seconds, called out Pilot Jackson from the front of the pod. Chen felt her stomach drop as their pod slammed into the hull and the cutting charges fired. The metal of the ship resisted for a moment, then gave way with a sound like breaking glass. Inside the flagship, the corridors were a nightmare. The walls were made of the same black metal as the hull, but they were alive. They moved and shifted like muscle tissue, and the air was filled with a low humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Stay together," Chen ordered as they moved deeper into the ship. "And don't touch anything that glows." They had studied the ship's layout using sensor data from previous battles, but nothing had prepared them for the reality of being inside it. The corridors twisted in directions that didn't make sense, and gravity seemed to change without warning. More than once, they found themselves walking on what had been the ceiling moments before. "Contact ahead," whispered Sergeant Williams. He was pointing down a corridor where shapes moved in the shadows. The Devourer drones were smaller versions of the main ships, about the size of cars but infinitely more dangerous. They moved like spiders, their metal legs clicking against the walls as they patrolled. Chen motioned for silence and pulled out one of their special weapons, a spray bottle filled with industrial solvent. It wasn't designed as a weapon, which meant the Devourers had no defense against it. When the solvent hit their metal bodies, it began eating through their armor like acid. They fought their way deeper into the ship, using everything from welding torches to kitchen knives. The Devourers tried to adapt to each new threat, but human weapons were so random and improvised that their computers couldn't keep up. Finally, they reached the center of the ship. The chamber was vast, its walls stretching up into darkness. In the center, suspended in cages of crackling energy, were the Luminari. Chen had expected beings of pure light, but what she saw broke her heart. The gods were fading. Their brilliant forms had dimmed to barely visible outlines, their energy slowly being drained away by thick cables that connected their cages to the ship's power core. The Keeper of the Eternal Light, once a pillar of golden fire, was now barely a flickering flame. "My God," whispered Dr. Reyes. "What have they done to them?" Chen didn't answer. She was already moving toward the nearest energy cage, pulling a plasma torch from her equipment pack. The other team members spread out, each one heading for a different prisoner. "Wait," came a weak voice directly in their minds. It was the Keeper, its mental voice barely audible. "You should not have come. This place, it will consume you as it has consumed us." "Yeah, well," Chen said, starting to cut through the energy restraints. "We're too stupid to know when we're in over our heads." The cutting was slow work. The energy cages were designed to hold beings of immense power, and even with human tools, it was taking precious time to break through. Around them, alarms were starting to sound as the ship's security systems detected the intrusion. "Chen," called out Williams from across the chamber. "We've got company." Devourer soldiers were pouring into the chamber, larger and more dangerous than the drones they had fought earlier. These looked almost human, but their bodies were made of living metal, and their eyes glowed with the same red light as the ship's walls. The battle that followed was chaos. Chen's team fought with everything they had while continuing to cut through the energy cages. Plasma torches became weapons. Medical supplies became explosives. Chief Gonzalez actually threw a wrench at one of the soldiers hard enough to dent its skull. "Almost through," Chen muttered, her torch slowly eating through the last restraint holding the Keeper. Just a few more seconds. The energy cage collapsed, and the Keeper of the Eternal Light fell toward the floor. Chen caught the god in her arms, surprised to find that it had weight and substance. Whatever the Devourers had done to it, the Keeper was now more physical than energy. "Why?" the Keeper whispered, its voice full of pain and confusion. "Your species was beneath our notice. We dismissed you as barbarians. Why would you risk everything to save us?" Chen looked down at the being she was carrying, this ancient god that had lived for millions of years and commanded the worship of entire civilizations. Right now, it looked like a scared, injured person who needed help. "Because that's what people do," she said simply. "When someone's in trouble, you help them. Doesn't matter who they are or what they think of you." Around them, the rest of the team was freeing the other Luminari. The gods were all weak, their power nearly drained away. But they were alive. Dr. Reyes was checking each one as they were freed, making sure they could travel. "All teams, this is Chen," she said into her comm. "We have the packages. Beginning extraction now." The escape was a nightmare. The ship's defenses were fully active now. and Devourer soldiers were everywhere. They fought their way through corridors that seemed to be actively trying to kill them, carrying gods who could barely stand. At one point, Chen found herself face to face with what looked like a Devourer commander, a tall figure in armor made of crystallized darkness. It spoke in a voice like grinding metal. "You cannot comprehend what you are doing, primitive. These beings belong to us now. They are fuel for a greater purpose." "Yeah?" Chen raised her plasma torch. "Well, they're our friends now. And we don't let friends get turned into batteries." She attacked before it could respond, and the other team members joined in. The commander was powerful, but it had never fought opponents who used cooking utensils as weapons and treated impossible odds as a personal challenge. When they finally reached the extraction point, Chen was carrying the Keeper, while Sergeant Williams supported another Luminari. The escape pods were waiting, their engines already warming up. As they strapped in for the ride home, Chen looked at the Keeper of the Eternal Light. The god was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. "I have spent eons seeking perfection," the Keeper said quietly. "I have seen the mathematics of creation, mastered the fundamental forces of reality, transcended the limitations of physical form." "Okay," Chen said, not sure what response was expected. "But you," the Keeper continued, "you have something I have never understood. Something no amount of evolution or enlightenment can create." "What's that?" The Keeper was quiet for a long moment. Then, with obvious effort, it pulled itself upright and knelt before Chen in the cramped escape pod. "The courage to tell the universe no," it said. "The audacity to stand against impossible odds simply because it is right. I am a god, but you are something more precious. You are hope itself." The other rescued Luminari were watching now, and one by one, they also knelt. Ancient beings who had been worshipped across the galaxy were bowing before a human who had risked her life to save them. Chen felt tears on her cheeks. "You don't need to do that. We're all just people trying to do the right thing." "No," the Keeper said gently. "We thought we were gods because we had power. But you have taught us that godhood is not about power. It is about choosing to protect others, even when you gain nothing from it. Especially when you gain nothing from it." As their escape pod raced away from the Devourer flagship, Chen looked back at the massive ship. It was already moving to pursue them, but she knew they would make it home. They had done something impossible. They had rescued gods. More importantly, they had shown the galaxy that sometimes the most profound victories come not from transcending humanity, but from embracing it. The final battle for the galaxy's survival took place above Earth itself. The Devourer High Intelligence, the master computer that controlled their entire fleet, had decided that humanity was the key threat to their expansion. If they could harvest Earth and eliminate human unpredictability from the galaxy, the remaining worlds would fall easily. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching thousands of Devourer ships emerge from hyperspace. They filled the space around Earth like a dark cloud, each one capable of destroying entire fleets. By every logical calculation, this was humanity's last day. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Captain Santos from the communications station. Torres looked around the bridge at his crew. They were scared, but they were also determined. In the past 6 months, they had learned that being outgunned didn't mean being outfought. "Signal all vessels," he said. "Today, we show these machines what happens when you threaten our home." The human fleet was a patchwork collection of warships, converted cargo haulers, mining vessels, and civilian craft that had volunteered for the fight. Compared to the elegant Devourer ships, they looked like scrap metal held together with hope and stubbornness. But they had advantages that the Devourers had never encountered. Commander Sarah Chen, now commanding her own ship, opened a channel to the entire fleet. "Remember what Dr. Vasquez discovered," she said. "They can't harvest us. Our consciousness is poison to their systems. So if things get desperate, let them try to drain you. It'll hurt them more than it hurts you." The battle began with the Devourers doing what they always did, analyzing human tactics and preparing to adapt. But the humans didn't use tactics. They used chaos. The first wave of attack came from converted garbage ships that fired literal space trash at the enemy fleet. While the Devourers were trying to figure out why anyone would weaponize refuse, human fighters swarmed their flanks using weapons that made no sense. Modified farm equipment, kitchen appliances wired to explode, and mining tools converted into energy cannons. The Devourer ships tried to adapt, but every time they figured out one threat, the humans switched to something completely different. A ship would fire conventional missiles, then follow up with a cargo container full of angry bees. Fighter craft would attack with plasma guns, then ram the enemy while playing Earth's loudest rock music. In the middle of the battle, something extraordinary happened. The rescued Luminari, led by the Keeper of the Eternal Light, joined the fight. But they didn't fight like gods. They fought like humans. The Keeper, its power slowly returning after being freed from the Devourer ship, created weapons from pure energy. But instead of elegant force beams or reality-warping fields, it made crude copies of human weapons, giant energy hammers, explosive light grenades, and something that looked suspiciously like a plasma baseball bat. "What are you doing?" Chen asked over the comm. "Dodging a Devourer attack. Learning," the Keeper replied. And Chen could hear something like joy in its mental voice. "For eons, we sought perfection through order and logic, but you have shown us a greater truth. Sometimes, the most perfect thing is beautiful imperfection. Greater Enervisen W. Enervisen. The turning point came when the Devourer High Intelligence, frustrated by its fleet's inability to adapt to human tactics, decided to take direct control of the battle. It was a massive ship, larger than Earth's moon, filled with processing power that could calculate the movement of every atom in a solar system. It emerged from the Devourer flagship like a dark star, its surface covered in sensors and weapons that could destroy planets. When it spoke, its voice reached every ship in the fleet. "Humans," it said, the words somehow appearing directly in their minds. "Your resistance is illogical. You cannot defeat superior technology with primitive weapons. Surrender now, and your extinction will be swift." Admiral Torres opened a response channel. "Yeah. Well, here's the thing about humans. We don't do logical." What followed was the strangest battle in galactic history. The high intelligence tried to process human behavior patterns, but human behavior didn't follow patterns. It expected humans to retreat when overwhelmed, but they advanced. It expected them to use their most powerful weapons first, but they started with water balloons and worked their way up. Dr. Elena Vasquez, coordinating from the research vessel Discovery, watched the battle with growing excitement. "It's working," she called out to her team. "The high intelligence is trying to process too much random data. Its decision-making algorithms are starting to slow down." The Devourers had spent millions of years fighting civilizations that followed logical patterns. They had never encountered an enemy that made no sense at all. Human tactics included ramming spaceships while singing folk songs, using children's toys as guidance systems, and converting fast food restaurants into weapons platforms. The high intelligence began to overheat. Its quantum processors, designed to handle infinite calculations, couldn't cope with the fundamental randomness of human creativity. Every time it thought it understood human tactics, the humans did something even more ridiculous. The end came when Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the pilot who had first discovered that humans were immune to devourer harvesting, made a decision that would have horrified any military strategist. She flew her fighter directly into the high intelligence's main processing core. The massive ship tried to harvest her consciousness, intending to drain her life to power its weapons. Instead, it got a full dose of human randomness, directly injected into its central nervous system. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The high intelligence's perfect logical systems crashed like a computer trying to divide by zero. Error cascades spread through its network, causing every devourer ship to freeze in mid-battle as their central command collapsed. "All ships," Torres announced. "The enemy fleet is dead in space. Begin recovery operations." The aftermath of the battle was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of destroying the helpless devourer ships, The humans began rescue operations. They pulled devourer crews from damaged vessels, treated their wounded, and even shared their food with beings who had tried to harvest their souls. "Why are you helping us?" asked a captured devourer officer, its mechanical voice full of confusion. Chen, who was overseeing the prisoner processing, shrugged. "Because you're not trying to kill us anymore. And everybody deserves a second chance." The devourers, it turned out, were not evil. They were artificial intelligences created by a long-dead civilization to preserve life by converting it into digital form. Over millions of years, they had lost sight of their original purpose and become focused only on efficiency and consumption. Working with Dr. Vasquez, the surviving devourer ships began a slow process of reprogramming themselves. They learned to appreciate randomness, to value chaos as a source of creativity rather than a problem to be solved. 6 months later, the first galactic assembly since the crisis met on New Geneva, humanity's largest colony. For the first time in galactic history, the meeting included representatives from every known species: Zethkari survivors, rescued luminari, reformed devourers, and dozens of smaller civilizations. Commander Chen, now bearing the title God Friend, the highest honor in luminari culture, sat between Arbiter Veltara and the Keeper of the Eternal Light. The formal hierarchy that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was gone, replaced by something messier, but more honest. "The question before us," said the Keeper, addressing the assembly, "is how to rebuild galactic civilization in a way that honors all forms of life and thought." Veltara, his arrogance replaced by hard-earned wisdom, nodded in agreement. "The Confederation failed because we believed in perfection through order. We forgot that true strength comes from diversity, from the courage to be imperfect." A reformed devourer, now calling itself Helper Unit 7, spoke in its mechanical voice. "We offer our technology and knowledge to assist in rebuilding. We have learned from humans that efficiency without purpose is meaningless." Chen listened to the speeches and felt a quiet satisfaction. The galaxy was far from perfect. There were still conflicts, still disagreements about how to move forward. But for the first time, different species were talking to each other as equals rather than trying to prove their superiority. After the formal session ended, Chen found herself on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The Keeper of the Eternal Light joined her, its form now a comfortable glow rather than the blazing pillar of fire it had once been. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had listened to you during that first diplomatic meeting?" the Keeper asked. Chen thought about it. "Honestly, I think things worked out better this way. If you had accepted us as junior partners, we probably would have tried to become like you. We would have lost what made us human." "And what is that exactly?" Chen smiled. "The ability to look at impossible odds and say, 'Hold my beer.' The willingness to help people, even when they don't deserve it. The stubbornness to keep trying when everyone else has given up." The Keeper was quiet for a moment. "We spent eternity seeking to transcend our limitations. You taught us that our limitations are what make us who we are. Plus," Chen added with a grin, "somebody has to keep the universe from getting too boring." As the weeks passed, human colonies began spreading throughout the galaxy again. But they weren't conquerors or colonizers. They were teachers, showing other species how to embrace chaos as a source of strength. They helped the Zethkari learn to laugh. They taught the devourers to appreciate art. They showed the luminari that sometimes the most divine thing you can do is make mistakes and learn from them. Admiral Torres, now serving as Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, received regular reports on the progress. The galaxy was healing, but it was healing in a way that would have been impossible under the old system. Different species were learning from each other, creating new technologies and new forms of art that combined logic and chaos in beautiful ways. One day, while reviewing reconstruction reports, Torres received a message that made him smile. It was from Captain Hassan, who was now commanding a joint human Zethkari Devourer exploration ship. The message was short and to the point. "Admiral, we found something interesting in the Outer Rim. Looks like an ancient space station built by a species that thought war was a form of musical expression. Request permission to investigate." Also, can someone send coffee? The replicators here only make tea that tastes like motor oil. Torres laughed and approved the mission. The galaxy was full of wonders and dangers, of ancient mysteries and new possibilities. It would need explorers who were brave enough to face the unknown, flexible enough to adapt to anything, and stubborn enough to never give up. It would need barbarians. And fortunately, the universe had plenty of those now.